Going to switch on and go.
Hello, good morning, Harrogate. Very warm-hearted, if slightly chilly, welcome to the brand new Human Gardener stage at the Harrogate Spring Flower Show. My name is Sarah Owen Hughes. I'm a professional horticulturist, and I'm here with my very great friend Faith Douglas, who's a curator at a local arboretum. And we have spent the whole weekend talking to the most interesting people behind the plants, people from the breadths and depths and widths of horticulture. It's been beyond inspiring and energising for us. It's all on Instagram Live, it's going onto Facebook and YouTube and podcasts, so you can listen to these at any time if you want a little bit of horticultural inspiration. But the great thing is as well, all of our talks are 15 minutes long, so pull up a chair, grab yourselves a coffee, rest your feet, and then go off and shop for the rest of the day. So our first guest of the morning is the magnificent Katie Rees, who I met many years ago, and we're great friends. We don't see each other enough, though, do we? From Kindle Woods. Kindle Woods is a woodland social enterprise based in North Yorkshire. They are passionate about the link between well-being, nature, and creating communities. They do two main things, which is running woodland well-being programs to support people experiencing mental health challenges, from adults suffering from depression to young people with ADHD and autism. They also work to promote sustainable woodland management with volunteers, planting trees, coppicing and hedge laying. And Katie can make wood into fire using just a couple of pieces of wood and a bit of string, which I'm hoping she'll tell us about later. So please put your hands together to give a really warm Harrogate welcome to Katie Rees from Kindle Woods, our woodland gardener.
So Katie, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, thanks for inviting me.
I have been trying to meet Katie for such a long time, because we are in very similar lines of work, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm just so pleased that you've agreed to come and chat to us today. So can you tell us all a little bit more about Kindle Woods? What exactly is Kindle Woods?
Yeah, sure. So, Sarah did a brilliant little introduction there. So basically, we're a social enterprise, which is we're a community interest company. So it's similar to a charity, but just a slightly different structure. And we, like you said, do those two main things. We work with people with mental health challenges out in the woods doing woodland wellbeing programs. So people will come along, and maybe they're experiencing anxiety, depression, PTSD, sort of a whole range of different challenges that they might be experiencing. And then we teach them practical woodland skills. So it could be fire lighting. We often start with a fire at the beginning, those like really simple skills to be able to light that fire, and we take them through it quite slowly. But it's amazing. By the end of the first session, they'll actually feel like they're able to do that, and it's kind of a real success point. And there's something wonderful about fire as well, how connecting that is, and to do it together as a group is really lovely. So we teach them that, but then we'll also do mindfulness skills as well. So maybe we'll do some gentle introductions to mindfulness to begin with, maybe getting people to notice the woodland around them. And it's such a lovely environment as well. There's lots of different bits about being in the woods which help to kind of reduce our cortisol levels, our stress hormones. And it's great. It kind of helps people to feel calmer and more at ease.
That's brilliant.
So that's what we do.
That's absolutely brilliant. So how exactly, because I'm really interested in people's journeys on how they actually end up doing what they do. So how exactly did you get into that?
So it's been a personal journey for myself. Basically, set Kindle Woods up 10 years ago. I had an injury, actually. I was trying to think, what happened? So I was working at an outdoor activity centre at the time. I'd just finished university and studied social anthropology at university, so nothing really that similar. And I basically I was playing a game out of British Bulldog, and I got kicked in the back of the head accidentally by a child. And it gave me sort of post-concussion syndrome. So I'd gone from being really active, I was about to go away to Mongolia for a year and that sort of thing, and then all of a sudden I just didn't have the same capacity that I had before. And it was eventually sort of chronic pain, chronic fatigue, sort of a thing that was diagnosed. And I had that for 2 years. So I was I'd gone from being active to not being active. And that 2 years really gave me time to I slowed right down. I started to notice the trees and started to notice myself and how I reacted in nature. And that led me to learn more about mindfulness and really look at sort of things like climate change as well, actually, and the impact that we were having on nature. And I just thought, do you know what, I want to learn from this experience. And it was a real challenge, but over the 2 years I kind of developed my confidence, got my own well-being back, and decided I was going to set Kindlewoods up. So it's come from that, but yeah.
So do you find that, so you work with a lot of people who have their own stuff going on, their own issues to deal with. Do you find that it still helps you?
Absolutely. I was actually thinking this the other day as we were writing a programme for one of the Woodland Wellbeing programmes, and just looking at really the content of it and just reminding yourself of, coming back to yourself and using those practices to calm yourself. And I mean, being part of the community as well, it's fantastic. We have volunteer days once a month, and just, being able to be practical. So all the skills that I've kind of had to learn as I've gone on this journey as well. I've learned the bushcraft, I've learned how to light fire by friction, I've learned how to do hedge laying, and just that sort of practical connection with nature is fabulous. I love it. Yeah. And then being part of the community of people who are all kind of like getting involved in that and learning about it. It feels great. It's lovely. So it gives me a lot as well.
Yeah. You mentioned to me earlier that you suffered from trauma.
Oh yeah.
And you did say that you found benefits to being outside, to being in the woods. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So after I recovered from the head injury and I'd kind of got back into work and was doing that sort of thing, I actually had a break-in at my house. And I got PTSD as a result of that. So I developed I just basically was very frightened of being in a house on my own at night. So it was a really difficult thing to experience, having, your house is your safe space. So, basically being in the woods really does help calm that kind of system. Your system gets activated. You've got all the fight or flight stuff going on. And so for me, basically that, being outside and being connected in that bigger way.
And you can see how much that's helped you, because I interviewed you for a podcast, for the Trials and Tribulations podcast, when we first started 2 years ago. And I met you by a lake. We sat down by some trees and we were touching the grass and talking about it. And then you just went, I'm going to Wild Swim now. And literally you just stripped down and got into the water. And I was going, there's no way.
Why did you not do that?
I'm going anywhere cold. And I'm fine with cold, I'm fine with wet, but just not together. I'm not great at cold and wet. And you literally came alive. You went, it's a challenge I'm doing to raise money for Kindlewoods. I'm crowdfunding, which was exceptional. And you really do put yourself out there to support the people who are using your service.
One of the ironies I think about having been through PTSD is that they talk about basically you're facing your worst fear regularly, and that actually gives you the skills to be able to face fear, and you become very competent at being able to look at challenge and overcome it, because that's something you're having to do, so you're actually really quite practiced at it. So I feel like I've put those skills into place in my life in general. So through the crowdfunding campaign that we did, getting into the lake, it was freezing. It was terrifying.
It was really freezing, and you were going, look, there's a leech on my leg, and flicking it off. And I was horrified and completely in awe at the same time. It was exceptional. It was my first ever interview as well for the podcast. It was unbelievable.
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
She was fluent then, so
she's always
just fluent. A natural, just
slightly too fluent at times.
So tell us a little bit about hedge laying, because you mentioned that to me earlier. I have a little bit of experience with hedge laying. I did a hedge laying course myself many years ago.
Really?
And we did it on it was a 25-year-old blackthorn hedge.
Oh my days. Oh.
This hedge was not a beginner's hedge laying hedge.
No.
And we had to do it with heritage tools. We were doing it with the little axes. Yeah. In reality, you'd pick up a chainsaw, but on a stem this big, you wouldn't be using a little axe.
Okay.
And we came out at the end of that week with thorns that size stuck in various parts of our body. It was. So tell us a little bit more about your hedge laying experience.
So I actually, another friend of yours, Demelza, Low Maintenance. So I went on a course with them probably 6 maybe 7 years ago now, and learned using those heritage tools. And the chap who taught me was Andrew Kirkwood, who has sort of been national champion at the National Hedgelaying Society's championships on and off over the years. And basically what happened was I kind of, after that course, then went away and did a bit more, and stayed in touch with Andy, and Andy was one of the Cumbrian axemen here as well at the Great Yorkshire Show. Because Kindlewoods is at the Great Yorkshire Show as well, so we kind of talked a bit then, and basically after a while he said, well, do you know what, you can I'll come and do a bit more hedgelaying with you. So we've kind of done more together. So I've kind of developed my experience over the years, but this last year actually we've done pretty much most of the hedgelaying season together. So it's been this fantastic opportunity, and I feel so grateful that I've had it, to be able to learn kind of the commercial side of hedgelaying. So I've gone from using axes and bill hooks and that kind of thing to using my chainsaw with like hedgelaying. So he's a Lancashire and Westmoreland hedgelayer, so I've learnt in that style. So
because they have different patterns, don't they, depending on what style you use.
Definitely. So the Lancashire and Westmoreland, I did a bit of Yorkshire hedgelaying recently, but I definitely need to practice that more. So it's fantastic, and we laid this year, I think, I'm now testing myself how many metres we've done. I think probably about 800 metres that we've laid this year. So
incredible. And why is hedgelaying so important?
It's brilliant for the biodiversity to have that hedge corridor. Basically, it's fantastic to have it. Hedgelaying itself almost regenerates the life cycle of that hedge. So it's a little bit like coppicing. We kind of are coppicing, but you're leaving the stem on, so you've got a whole piece of the hedge that's still growing and still thriving, but you're cutting the dead wood out and allowing new shoots to grow in the spring. So it's kind of able to the stems often last quite a lot longer than they would do if you don't do it. So it's like regenerating that life cycle.
It's hugely sustainable and environmentally friendly, isn't it?
Absolutely.
There's actually in Tockwith near York, they have collections of replica historic hedges with different plants in that they've brought back in, and they've got an elm hedge, a historic elm hedge, and which is quite unusual in the UK after Dutch elm disease. But actually, if you coppice and you hedgelay, you can sustain it, and they believe parts of that hedge are 800 years old. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's an absolute privilege to be there.
That's quite interesting with the elm actually, and the Dutch elm disease, because Dutch elm disease impacts on a mature tree, not the younger tree.
So if you keep it small,
absolutely,
exactly,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Yorkshire Show.
Yes.
So Sarah was telling me that you start fires at the Yorkshire Show with bits of string.
Literally.
So how if I was to go and light a fire with a bit of string, what would I do?
Oh gosh. So I was saying earlier actually that I'm more used to standing up with sticks in my hand than actually being sat down in a chair. So basically, before the Yorkshire Show, I decided that we had somebody else that was doing the demonstrations, and then one year he wasn't able to come and do it, so I was like, it kind of fell on me a little bit. So I thought, okay, I'd been doing fire by friction for about 3 years prior to that. But there's a difference between being able to do it for yourself and then doing it in front of an audience. You really have to know it. So I spent every day for a month going out into the woods and with a knife and a bit of string, basically learning, teaching myself how to do it, and getting to the point where I knew for definite that if I stood up out there with a crowd of people, that I would be able to make fire happen. So the main points of it are you want very dry wood, that's really important. You want soft wood, so the bottom, you've got a hearth, so the bottom piece wants to be a really soft wood, so willow is good. There's a lot of willow that you can find locally as well. Lime's also really, really soft wood, and that's excellent. That's kind of like the best wood that you want to be finding, particularly if you're a beginner, but there are sort of less lime trees about, so willow is a really good one. And then I tend to use hazel as a drill and a hardwood at the top, so for my bearing block, which then you use that to bear down onto your drill and your hearth. You'd want something hard like hornbeam or hawthorn or something like that. And then you've got your bow, and then you use that to basically create friction onto your hearth. you collect your embers, and then you put that hot ember into your nest of dry grasses that you've collected, and that's also dry. So yeah, and then you basically blow on it and smoke comes out, and then you create your fire.
And it's the most mesmerising and beautiful thing to see as well as do. I mean, it's amazing when you achieve it. But again, you videoed yourself doing that and put it online because you said, I'm frightened of being at the show, so I'm going to put myself out there online and build up my confidence. And then you were being videoed at the show, just setting fire to things within seconds. It was so immensely powerful to watch. It was amazing.
Thank you.
So what's next for you? I think you're doing some tree planting, aren't you? What are you looking for next for Kindlewoods?
Yeah. So we're basically partnering with the White Rose Forest. So it's part of the Northern Forest, so a big sort of scheme to reforest the north of England. So we are looking to do community tree planting days with them later in the year. So again, when the season starts. So we're looking for community groups and individuals who are interested in wanting to join us to tree plant later in the year. So that's something that we're really excited about doing. So we'll know more details on that as we sort of progress over the next couple of months.
And people can follow you online, can't they?
People can follow us online, absolutely. Yeah. We've also got, so it's our 10th birthday this year, so Kindlewoods has been going for 10 years, can't quite believe it. So we're going to be having a birthday celebration later in the year as well. We're also looking for more directors for our board. We've sort of, need more people on that, so we're recruiting for those at the moment. And generally volunteers as well, so we're always looking for volunteers. So we've got our volunteer day on Friday coming up on the 29th, so we will be doing all sorts of different things there at the woods where we're based in Felixkirk. So
fantastic. Well, Katie, that's just been such an action-packed 15 minutes. We've both learnt so much. Thank you so much. Because I know you were a little bit apprehensive, but you have absolutely blown me away again with your passion and enthusiasm. A huge Harrogate thank you, everyone, for Katie Rees from Kindlewoods, our woodland wellbeing expert.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, Harrogate, and a very warm-hearted, if slightly breezy and chilly welcome to the brand new Human Gardener stage at the Harrogate Spring Flower Show. We've been here all week, and what an amazing week it's been for us. I'm Sarah Owen Hughes. I'm a professional horticulturist. I've been volunteering at the show for at least 10 years, normally on the advice stand with the Chartered Institute of Horticulturists. And it's been my absolute pleasure and joy this week to spend time with somebody who was a friend from the show, who's now become more than that, is a great friend now and partner in crime, I think it's safe to say. And we've been talking to the breadth and depth of horticulturists, people from all over the industry, the faces behind the plants. We've had researchers, we've had fungal specialists, we've had well-being practitioners, we've had forest nursery, all sorts. And it's now my absolute privilege and joy to spend a few minutes reflecting and chatting to my great friend Faith Douglas about the work that she does. Now, Faith is a curator at Thorpe Perrow Arboretum in Bedale. If you haven't been, you need to go. Put it on your list. It's amazing for spring colour. It's even better in the autumn, I think. The Halloween trail is a sight to behold. And I took my children there every autumn from the year dot onwards. But she's going to talk about some of the more therapeutic work that she does as a forest bathing practitioner. So can we please put our hands together and give a very warm Harrogate welcome to Faith Douglas, the forest gardener.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
It's an absolute pleasure, my lovely.
Yeah, so what do you want to know?
Well, first of all, I want to know what you're drinking at the moment, because you've had some really weird stuff in that cup this week.
Well, not that weird.
Well, you've had crushed up mushrooms.
Well,
it did look like
perfectly
soil.
Acceptable, I think. It's better than coffee.
It is better. It is better than
not
coffee.
Bad for you. It's good
not
for you.
bad for you.
Yeah, this is green tea, actually.
Okay.
It's cold green tea, I have to say. The stage wife is lacking slightly. It's cold.
We've been beautifully looked after by Lena and Lydia this week. It's been fantastic. And we're being guarded here by Elliot, who's your third.
He's my youngest son. Elliot is my youngest son and has decided to join us Elliot turned up this morning, and I've not seen my children since last weekend, because we've been quite busy and full on. And he took a look at the stage, and I have to say the stage is a really good mishmash of Sarah and my houses. It's basically our living rooms you're sitting in right now. And Elliot's just come in and took a look around, and he said, "Where's my books? And what's the poof doing there? And what did you bring the moss balls for?" And he's recognising his own things.
Did you wonder why the house was so tidy at home, because there's nothing left in it?
It's all here, Elliot. So Elliot's decided to join us on stage just because. Why not?
Why not? Why not? A great future on the stage for him, I think. So Faith, forest bathing. Yep. Is it actually having a bath in a forest?
Not unless it's raining.
Okay.
No, not really. So the reason it's called forest bathing is because it's a direct translation of Shinrin-yoku, which is the Japanese technique, which is forest bathing. Now, you don't have to get wet unless it's raining. You don't have to put your swimming cosy on or anything like that. It's basically a way of immersing yourself in a wooded environment. So imagine laying in a big, fluffy, bubbly bath, all warm, all cosy, feeling all calm and chilled and relaxed. You get exactly the similar effects and feelings from being immersed in a wooded environment. So unless it's raining, you're not really going to get wet, no.
Oh, and we did a little bit on the first day, didn't we? We had a bit of a moment just before the show started.
I thought you said on our first date then.
No, not our first day here, not our first day. We'd have an awful lot of explaining to do, wouldn't we? But we both went over there just behind these stands because we were a bit excited and nervous, and we went behind the stands and just stood and touched one of the conifers and just touched the bark and had a little moment and just looked at it.
We did.
Why is it so important to get out into nature and to touch trees and to spend time in their canopy?
So the Japanese have been doing studies on trees and the benefits they have on human beings for like 30 years, and you know, so this isn't old knowledge. It's knowledge that's been handed down ancestrally as well over different cultures across the planet. So it's not necessarily a Japanese technique, but what they found during their studies and their research is that trees release wood oils. They actually release the wood oils for themselves, not us. I might like to point that out. We think everything's for us, don't we? But it's actually not. It's for the trees. But we can get a huge benefit just from inhaling these oils. So when we hang around a tree, whether it be a tree in a car park or whether it be a vast forest or a woodland, you know, we inhale these oils, they have a direct effect on our nervous system. So the responses you would have is, first of all, it's a physical response. So your lowered heart rate, lowered blood pressure, your cortisol levels, which is our stress response, will become balanced. And I say balanced as opposed to lowered, because you don't want to be too low, because you need a little bit of stress in your life, because it's what keeps you safe. It's what gets you out of bed in the morning. It's what makes you go and get your breakfast when you're hungry. It's actually what makes you go to the toilet. So we need to have a little bit of healthy stress in our lives. So it balances cortisol levels. Now, the knock-on effects on our system of regular hanging out with trees is it would improve your quality of life. It can boost our immune systems, which everybody at the moment needs a really good, healthy immune system, don't they?
Yeah.
You sleep better. Your pain, I won't say it gets rid of pain, because everybody's pain is different. It perhaps helps people manage their pain better. Maybe take ownership of their pain, I suppose. You know, what does your pain look like for you, actually, as opposed to getting rid of pain. It helps with mood disorders, so depression, anxiety, trauma, brilliant for PTSD, and fantastic for children, helps with attention deficit disorder. I could just keep listing the knock-on effects that are just unbelievable. You know, the natural world supports our life, it supports our existence, and it's so important.
Well, we need it, it doesn't need us. So
absolutely. Well, if you think about, if you removed human beings from the planet, what would nature do? It would thrive.
Yeah.
If you remove nature from the planet, what would happen to human beings? We wouldn't survive. It's that simple.
So yesterday on the stage I mentioned that my middle son, who's revising for GCSEs at the moment, at the end of each day we're encouraging him to go for a walk, and he's been climbing trees because that's how he relaxes. And I was a bit worried that I'd said this on the stage, and he was stood there, and I said to him afterwards, were you embarrassed? He said, no, but my big brother didn't know I did it. And his big brother had said, well, that's a bit risky, you've got exams coming up. But he needs that. He climbs and he puts his hand on the tree first, just to check that it's okay. You know, lets the tree know, because he said it's a living thing, and he climbs it and sits there. And for him, it's extraordinarily therapeutic, and he was always like that from a baby onwards. And I just think, what a gift as a young adult to feel that he can still do that, to help his mental health and his stress levels as he's preparing for his exams.
Do you know, it will help with his memory, is because it improves our cognitive function, and not just the trees, but all of nature. So birdsong, for example, the studies on birdsong, for memory function, for concentration, for focus, is unbelievable. So anybody, Lydia, you're listening, revising for your exams, and your son, Sarah, as well, you know, the best thing you could be doing is going and sitting in the garden and doing it outside. So actually what he's doing is amazing. It's brilliant.
When you go outside, there's a stand called A Blackbird Sang, and they pipe Blackbird Song from their stand. And I stopped there at about 7:30 this morning, and they just turned it on. And there are plenty of birds around here. We're in leafy Harrogate. We're very fortunate. But I just stopped there, and it just washed over me. It was absolutely beautiful. But we don't notice it, because we don't listen, do we?
And that's the thing. That's the thing about forest bathing, and that's the thing about this is where you bring mindfulness into it, and we can apply this to all parts of our life. But it's very easy to do it in the natural world, because it inspires us, and it gets our attention, and we're filled with awe and wonder. So it switches our senses on. It does it naturally. It doesn't matter what our senses are like. You know, for example, somebody who can't hear experiences sound, because sound is vibration. So we feel it in our body. You know, somebody who can't see can still experience vision, but it's just different. Everybody is different, and it's about working with the senses you actually have. So mindfulness is just fantastic, and nature makes it really easy for us. So for a lot of people, they can be quite afraid of mindfulness. It's a huge buzzword, and people might think, I've got to sit there, close my eyes, breathe, clear my mind. Can anybody clear their mind? No way. It's difficult, isn't it? We're human, and that's what our minds do. And if you're fighting against the way you are, it makes it very hard. And then we put ourselves down, and then we feel bad, and it's not helping you at all. Nature, on the other hand, makes it really easy. Just going for a walk, but being fully present, being fully aware of where you are, the birds singing, what does the ground feel like under your feet, what does that tree feel like as you brush past it, what does it smell like, what's the sun doing, being fully centered, fully aware, fully in that moment is so empowering, and it's so healthy. It's the best thing anybody could be doing for themselves, and it's actually not that difficult.
And
the
it's free.
trickiest part is, and it's free. That's absolutely what it is. I think the trickiest part is giving yourself that permission. Like we said the other day when we were speaking to Liz Ware from Silent Space, of switching off your mobile phone. You do not need to be available 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, that's a really unhealthy thing to be. And, you know, it's not sustainable. You know, it's absolutely not sustainable. Switch your mobile phone off. You know, I find social media and things very challenging, but it's very hard in this day and age. How do you get things out there? How do you share stuff with people these days? Because people seem to have, you know, they don't chat as much as apart from us, obviously we chat a lot, don't we? But, you know, people don't seem to have the same connections. And one of the things I found with nature is it builds these connections. When you build that relationship with nature, you build that relationship with other people. It makes it easier to communicate with other people. And actually, most importantly, you build it with yourself. And when I've got to share things on social media or, you know, post something to get some advertising for something that's happening or something like that, which is life. You've got to do that if you work and you know, to pay your bills, feed your kids, that sort of thing, you know. But you've got to have that balance, and it's got to be a really healthy balance. So some walks I will take my phone, I will take a picture, I will do whatever I've got to do. Other walks, my phone does not come with me. It's not invited. It doesn't come with me. And neither are the kids and the dogs, I have to say that as well. You know, you've got to have these moments for yourselves, and it's not selfishness, it's self-worth, and it's really, really important. And I think it's mindset, isn't it? We need to change mindsets, and actually doing something like that for yourself is so empowering, and it's really important.
I've got two more questions, Faith, because obviously we have talked for months planning this, and we've talked for hours this week, haven't we? I think by the end of today we'll have interviewed 40 people, I think, which is astonishing. We're shadows of our former self. The first question is, I can't imagine, because we're a similar age, I'm considerably older, but a similar sort of age bracket.
You're not that much older.
Yeah, it feels like it, to be honest, today. But I can't imagine a careers officer at your school ever saying to you, Faith, I can see you as a Shinrin-yoku practitioner and a curator of a nationally important arboretum. How on earth did this job find you?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
So you started off as a mental health
Yes,
nurse.
I worked in nursing, and I predominantly did mental health. I also did challenging behaviour as well, and a little bit of neurological disabilities. And I loved my garden. I was lucky enough to be brought up in Harrogate, and my parents used to take us for walks in the woods after they finished work. We used to go to the beach on a weekend. You know, we had kind of had a life that, you know, when you're a child, you kind of take it for granted, but you don't really realise what they're setting you up for, you know. We were lucky, you know, we didn't sit in front of the TV all the time. You know, there was no computers, and I think there were, but they weren't very good, were they? No. You know, we didn't have mobile phones. There was nothing like that. So we were exposed to nature from very, very young. My granddad was a gardener, you know, so it was an obvious thing, really, for me.
It was a connection.
When I finished a shift at work, I didn't really realise what I was doing. I would go, and I used to live near the cemetery, actually. Mm-hmm. And if anybody's been to the cemetery in Harrogate, it's near here, actually. There's a garden of rest. There's a beautiful garden. Yeah. And I used to actually go in there and just sit and, you know, debrief, just download everything that had happened that day, whatever. And it helped me, and it made me feel better. I didn't really recognise that at the time, but it did. But it got to the point where my job got on top of me. It started to affect the way I felt, affect my whole life, actually. And somebody said to me, you know, well, because I didn't really know what to do, you know, you can only do what you're doing. You can't not brave enough to do anything else or dare to do anything else. And he said to me, he said, well, what do you like doing? I was like, well, I like being in my garden. I love my garden. It probably wasn't very good, but it was my garden. I didn't really care, you know, it was there. It was amazing. But I know he was like, well, you know, why don't you do that? I was like, how on earth do I make a living in my garden, being a gardener? How do I do that? Coming to something like this actually would have been amazing. It would have been really helpful. Yeah. And I started researching courses and things. And I ended up at Ask and Brian doing a course. And I was lucky at the time, a job opportunity came up at Horticap. Yeah. And we chatted to Horticap yesterday. And it was I was lucky enough to get the job, and it was a really easy blend for me from a career with people to a career with plants. I mixed the two together. I loved it. it was perfect for me. And I love the therapeutic side. I was really interested in it. And, you know, nature became such a massive part of my life. I'd moved out of Harrogate, ended up, you know, to cut a long story short, ended up at the Arboretum, had my own plant centre, started running my own business. And I actually thought I wouldn't work with people again, because I left Horticap, and Elliot was little at the time. He was a baby. Good boy, actually. Good baby. And I never thought, I really didn't think I'd work with people again. But Help for Heroes knocked on my door.
Yeah.
And you can't say no, can you? Oh, go on then. So we did this project together, and then they offered me a job, so I started working for them as well, doing a bit more horticultural therapy. And it sort of developed from there, really. But how the forest bathing came into it is I don't actually really know when it was dropped into my life. I think I must have read something, because I'm a massive reader.
Yeah.
But I was going through a difficult stage in my life, and I needed something to help me. And I realised it's what I was doing. I'd learnt mindfulness, so I started blending the two together, and I was, this is really interesting, this works, this is great.
Yeah.
And I started experimenting with veterans. That sounds really bad, but they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And actually seeing those benefits firsthand was just massive for me, massive for me. So it's developed from there, snowballed from there, whatever, you know, however you want to say it. And it's just, every day is a new day, and who knows what it's going to bring next.
And it's astonishing. And we have run out of time, but I know she won't say anything about this because she's been very, very bad at selling herself all week. But Faith has written the most incredible book called The Nature Remedy, and I thoroughly recommend it. She'll sign it if you ask her nicely. And in there are little snippets and hints and tips to help us who've maybe got a little bit disconnected from nature. I mean, it's the first thing we did in lockdown was we all worked out where can we walk, and went for a little walk. But there's still people working from home doing blended work programs. My husband's one of them. Yeah. And we've lost connection again. We've got back to our desks and we've lost that connection with nature. And you've written such an incredible guide to getting that reconnection back. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's on my bedside table, and she hasn't signed it yet, but I will make her do that when we next meet up after the show. But in the meantime, can we have a very huge Harrogate bagpiping welcome and thank you to Faith Douglas, our forest bather.
Thank you, Sarah.
Just all of them.
You
can bring all children.
Good morning, everybody, and a very, very warm-hearted, if slightly breezy and chilly welcome to the Harrogate Spring Flower Show. We are live from the brand new Human Gardener stage, where we've been all weekend talking to people who cover the breadth, depth, width, length of horticulture and associated industries. So we're talking to the people behind the plants and people who use the plants and nature in their work and what they do. I'm here, my name's Sarah Owen Hughes, and I'm a professional horticulturist, and so I'm here curating this stage and talking to the most amazing people with my friend Faith Douglas, who's a curator of an arboretum and a forest bathing practitioner, and her youngest child Lilith, who has found the rubber duck on the stage and now won't leave it alone, which is quite right because she's earned that, haven't you?
She has.
That's the deal.
She looks for a rubber duck every single show. She's got to find a rubber duck, and we had a peacock duck this time, haven't we? And we're now talking today to, because it's a Sunday, we thought we'd have a little bit of a break and a reset and a relax, and we'll talk a little bit about actual faith and religion. So we're talking to Forest Church. So I've got Reverend Jenny Bradley and Catherine Burridge from Kairos Church in Harrogate and from Kingdom Gardens. So Forest Church is much more than worshipping outdoors. They aim to enjoy nature in their time together and to reflect their love and care for every aspect of God's creation. Meeting in the Pine Woods, which is just between the Valley Gardens and RHS Harlow Car, at 3 o'clock on the 4th Sunday of the month. So they are literally hot-footing it from here to there for the afternoon service. Can you please put your hands together for a massive warm welcome for the Rev Jen and Catherine, our Forest Church practitioners. Now, Faith, I think you're going to be really interested in this because over this weekend we've had a bit of a running theme that everyone I've invited onto the stage has been somebody I've stalked in some way. I've either tracked them down online or literally knocked on their door and said, "You've got some nice plants, can I be your friend?" And actually this is the other way around, Jen, isn't it?
Well, it might be the other way around, Sarah. I don't know what you could possibly mean.
A number of years ago, I was walking home from school with my 3 children, and this large car slowed down outside my house, and a window came down, and a voice went, "Oh, this is where you live." And I looked and thought, I have no idea who this woman is. I just sort of smiled and got into the house as quickly as possible. And my youngest, who was 4, said, "Oh, that is my friend Emma's mum." And I said, "Oh, is it? Oh, that's lovely. Yes, we is getting married when we is older." And I said, "Oh, are you? Have you asked Emma?" "No, she's told me." And you know, they're 14 and they're still best friends now.
They are.
And Emma is such a good influence on Sam. She shows him what's what. And I've not been able to avoid you since, have I?
No, sorry, still stalking you.
Yeah, we're partners in gin and partners in crime, which is just beautiful. One of the best neighbours to have. And Jenny is actually a newly hatched. Is that what they call it? A newly hatched vicar. She only qualified fully.
Yeah, collar still shiny.
Yeah, still shiny collar, fully dipped in September, was it last year?
July last year.
Wow.
Time's gone quick.
Wow. So tell me, first of all, what is Kairos Church? Because it's not an old building with a steeple, is it?
It definitely isn't an old building with a steeple. It's not, is it, Catherine? No. Kairos Network Church operates in a gathered and scattered way. So I know, it sounds weird, doesn't it? Yeah, so we are under the Church of England, but we are under a bishop's mission order. And out of 620 churches in this diocese, there's maybe only 3 or 4 BMOs. And so this allows us to operate within the whole deanery rather than having just a parish. So, yes, we do gather on a Sunday, and there is always a 9 a.m. Holy Communion service. But actually, in terms of our bigger gatherings, they operate on a first and a third Sunday. We call those central gatherings. It's what you and I might recognise as a family service. That's what we might call it that. Yeah. And it's in the hall rather than in a church building. It's on Westcliff Hall in Harrogate. But the other weeks, we operate in a totally different way. We meet in communities, of which Forest Church is one of our communities, of which Catherine is part of that particular community, which is called Connect. So we've been running that for a couple of years now, Forest Church. But we have all different types of communities. We have Messy Church once a month, and we have a group called Kindle, funnily enough. You were talking earlier to Katie, which is a group which is lots of families with teenagers. We have a Fairfax Church, which is on an estate in Harrogate. So we have various different communities. That's just a handful of them. So yeah, and that's how we meet.
So you're going out to the people rather than sitting and waiting for them to come to you. So
exactly
it's
that.
much more flexible and a much more modern way for people to practice faith and to celebrate religion, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's easier for people as well, because some people don't want to walk into a church building. Some people do, and they love it, and that's fantastic. Yeah. But some people feel more comfortable in other environments, and so Kairos Main, we aim to offer that and just whatever really, there's something really for everyone in terms of our communities that we have. So, I think Catherine found that when you joined, didn't you?
And how long have you been a member of the church?
So I think we started going about 8 years ago. Where, my middle son was a baby when we started going there, and the very first meeting we went to was actually not in a church building. It was at Brimham Rocks. So,
wow!
Yeah,
what a location!
We got invited along and just hang out. We were like doing the flying kites and picnics, and the kids were climbing the rocks, and just sort of straight away, just really sat well with our family. We've got 3 children, and they don't like sitting still and being talked to, which doesn't happen, And the thing that they love about Forest Church, and I was checking in with them before I was coming to talk to you guys this morning, and there's a lot of forest crafts, there's a lot of nature trails and stories that relate back to nature and plants, and but really simple, basic things that we take for granted, soil and water, and the kids just really naturally kind of relate to that, and actually, then those life lessons which faith is sort of fundamental to, it just come to them so naturally, and we get so much out of it.
And it is literally in a clearing on the edge of Harrogate, isn't it? And it's a beautiful little oasis. So I came along at Christmas, didn't I?
You did.
My family, we all played brass instruments, so we came and played Christmas carols for you. And it was people with their dogs and people just walking past and drifting in, a bit like here, actually, where there's a sort of a through traffic of people coming in and out. And some are curious and some have faith and some don't have faith. And there were children with a table doing crafts and just getting into the woods. And why do you think that being in a forest setting works so well and sits so well with faith, with practicing your faith?
I personally believe that that nature and creation is much more fundamental to the very nature of God and the very nature of who we are as human beings. And actually, over generations and centuries, we've introduced sort of formality to religion, and that looks a lot like structure and buildings and steeples and I don't know what else. And I think actually you strip all of that away and you get back to the very heart of what God and faith and our own existence is really all about.
Yeah, which ties in with absolutely everything we've been talking about this weekend, really hasn't it? Yeah. It's about that connection and getting back to the earth that's sustaining us. Because you don't normally wear your collar, do you, as well, when you're in the Forest Church?
No, I probably wouldn't be wearing a collar, no, so don't wear the collar that often.
No. But you obviously dressed up for us, bless you.
I do on a Sunday, and it is Sunday.
It is a Sunday. It is your working day.
It is my working day.
Absolutely. So what is it about Forest Church that you really enjoyed, Jen? Because,
Well, it's funny because when I knew I was coming to Kairos, I went and did a bit of mystery shopping and brought some friends along.
You were stalking them as well?
I was, brilliant. Yeah, I know, it's like a thing.
There's a theme here.
I'm very good at it. And came along, and at that point we were still in bubbles and you had to be separated, and that's where the pandemic, has really sort of given a good opportunity for Forest Church to really take off, because it was a place that you could meet and worship and or just hang out, and you were able to do that, and you couldn't do that in many other places. And so I went along with my children, and my girls thought it was absolutely great, and I think that was a huge testimony, really. And the kids were like, "Oh, this is a cool place. You're going to come to, Mum," So that was a really great start for me to be introduced to Kairos actually at Forest Church. And I just think the environment is so relaxed that literally you can invite anyone with or without a faith. And I think for the children, they're able to sort of roam and explore, and like you said before, you can bring your dog, and on a Sunday afternoon, as you're out with your family, it's a lovely way to spend the afternoon, to make it part of what you're doing that day.
Yeah.
And so it's fit very well, I think, with family life generally, but it truly isn't a fully intergenerational way to worship, way to be together. That doesn't exclude anybody, and I love that.
Yeah, and when I spoke to some of the people there, they were saying, we've brought grandparents, and we're all going to go home and have Sunday lunch later in the afternoon after church, and it was just, again, like you say, very accessible way for people with or without faith to come and worship and celebrate, whether that's nature, whether that's a belief or not.
Yeah.
It's entirely accessible. Now, Catherine, I know you've in a former iteration as well, because I think we've met before professionally, because Catherine's a garden designer, and with her husband you run Kingdom Gardens, which I'm guessing the name has come about because of your faith as well.
Yeah.
And how does that interact? Because obviously you're a landscaper and a gardener, and you're working with customers, and that must inform your beliefs, but also your beliefs must also inform that. And how does that work for you?
Yeah, I think there's loads of layers to it. And I was thinking about this before coming here this morning. When I was younger, I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. But I loved art. I've always loved art and being creative. And I knew I wanted to do something that connected with people and helped people. And I actually came to garden design through a sort of longer journey. It wasn't sort of a straightforward route. I came through a sort of fine art background. And all the things, the guests that you've been speaking to over the weekend, there's so many layers, there's so many ways that gardens and plants and connecting with nature really help us on so many levels, physically, mentally. But I also believe, and I'm not the only person to have referenced it this weekend, but that it touches your soul and it touches your spirit in a way that nothing else actually can. And you don't have to have a faith or a belief in God or a creator to still feel that power and that regeneration that you get from spending that time in the presence of nature. And for me, I think making gardens and crafting gardens is a way of sort of entering into that creative flow and actually I feel incredibly privileged to be able to do that and to connect with God and connect with nature in that way. It's a really powerful thing, and to see how being in a garden environment affects people and changes them, right deep inside. So,
absolutely. And I think finally, Jen, I know that I know because obviously I know you so well. I know your favourite passage from the Bible is relating to nature, which I absolutely love, and we've had long conversations about oaks of righteousness. And could you just explain briefly what that is?
When I had a sense of call, the place that I was at, which was a New Wine Conference in Harrogate, the whole theme was from Isaiah 61, which was the year of the Lord's favour, and the oaks of righteousness featured fairly heavily. But and I think that it really opens your eyes to the fact that how much nature is mentioned in the Bible, and how actually scripturally, the Bible's pretty much set outdoors, so it's everything from your creation stories right through to Jesus taking his time to spend in nature, to take out quiet time for himself. And it's very much something we've been talking about spending time in nature and how important it is to take itself off and just have a moment, which is obviously very close to your heart. In fact, I looked this up because I thought this was quite fun, but actually besides human beings, trees are the most mentioned living thing in the Bible, which
I'm
I
not
thought was really,
surprised.
which I thought was really cool.
And quite rightly so.
Yeah, quite rightly so, because trees are incredible. And this afternoon, Forest Church is happening, as you said, Sarah, and the theme is water. And so at 3 o'clock, we'll be joining our team there for Forest Church to talk about water, which incidentally is mentioned 722 times in the Bible. Wow. So nature features very
central,
heavily,
isn't
and
it?
it's really central.
And I can't think of a better cathedral than one that is made out of trees. I think that's so powerful, isn't it?
And I think we do feel
at
that.
every level, yeah,
When we're
absolutely.
there, we really do feel like that. It's
Absolutely.
a really wonderful sense in that space, isn't it?
Oh, well, that's just been such a breath of fresh air. It's been so restorative to have you on the stage with us. Thank you so much. Can we just have a huge Harrogate thank you to the Reverend Jenny Bradley and Catherine Burridge from Kairos Church, the Forest Church in Harrogate.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
my hips are right forever because I've had hip replacements.
Oh, you're bionic. I love that. I love that. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm-hearted, if slightly chilly, welcome to the Harrogate Spring Flower Show and the brand new Human Gardener stage. My name is Sarah Owen Hughes and I am a professional horticulturist, and I've been volunteering at the show for 10 years on the advice stand. And this year we decided to change things a little bit, and along with my great friend and partner in crime, Faith Douglas, who is a curator at a local arboretum, we have trawled and expanded our network across the whole range, breadth and depth of horticulture and related industries to find some of the most interesting and exciting people to talk to. And we think it's working quite well. This is basically our living rooms. We've brought everything from home. I almost don't want to take them back because the house is too tidy now. It looks great, very empty. And we're doing these 15-minute chats, so it's quick. You can have a coffee, you can have an ice cream, you can rest before you go and buy more things in the plant pavilion. And it's just an opportunity to get a little insight into something that's a little bit different. Now, we did advertise that we were going to have a bee inspector, and unfortunately, as what happens at the moment, there's lots of people who can't come for various reasons, but actually we've been blessed because we've got double the fun and double the trouble, I suspect, because I had a little chat with these two earlier. We've got some fantastic almost lifelong beekeepers. We've got Robert and Judith Hart, who are from the Harrogate and Ripon Beekeeper Association. So we're going to hear a little bit more about their story and hope that it brings a buzz, if you don't mind the pun, and gets people inspired into supporting bees in our own gardens. So can I have a really warm Harrogate afternoon welcome to Robert and Judith Hart, our beekeepers.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for stepping in, because it was a little bit of a moment when we went, we want to talk about bees and we don't know who, and we're delighted that you're both here. Now Judith, I understand that you were the first of
That's
the pairing
right.
to get into beekeeping. So what happened? What was the moment for you?
Well, I was a biology teacher.
Right.
And for years, as a biology teacher, I had said, when I retire, I will go to the Galapagos Islands and I will keep bees.
Fantastic.
And I did both. And
Oh,
we're here
wow.
today to talk about the bees.
Yeah, wow.
And so the first thing I did was go to a course.
Right.
And I found that there was a very good course in Harrogate.
Yes, yep.
A man called John Annett was running it. He was very well known for many things. And I did that course. And at the end of the course, you have acquired a very small colony of bees. You've made yourself a hive. One of the classes is hive making. You've made yourself a hive from a pack. You don't have to saw up the pieces.
Yeah.
And my hive was ready. And you take home this small colony that you've had in the class in the Beekeeping Association's apiary, and you take that home and you're now looking after it. And it was rather like going home with your first baby, because I looked at that and thought, I'm responsible for these
Yes.
bees.
Well, last week, my husband got a call from one of his colleagues who lives just around the corner, who said, can I borrow your company car because it's bigger than my car? And my husband said, yes, of course. And he said, because I'm just going off to collect my apiary that I've built on my Harrogate and Ripon beekeeping course, and I'm going to put 40,000 bees in the boot of your car. And he came round afterwards to prove to us that the car was bee-free, because we were a little concerned. He said he actually drove home in his bee suit just in case. And he said, if they come out, if they escape, I'll be more worried than you. We'll get them out of the car. And he was just vibrating with excitement. And it was exactly that new dad
Yes.
look in his
Yes.
eye. It was,
Yeah.
I've got my babies, and he's wanted it for years, and it was just amazing.
Yes.
It was amazing. So you started off with a hive.
That's right, yes.
What's the maximum number you've got to, or you've got to now?
Well, let's join Robert in.
Oh yes, yeah.
Well,
Because-
I'd quite like to know, when Judith rocked up home with this load of bees, how did you feel about that, Robert?
Well, I was pretty sceptical about the whole idea.
Were you?
Yeah, I'd spent my career working in agriculture, and over the 40 years or so, I dealt with nearly all farm animals in one form or other, either advising on or researching on. And bees, didn't really seem to count for very much compared with cows or sheep or whatever. Right. However, Judith got stuck into it, and of course I'd be out there saying, "What are you doing now, dear?" standing at a safe distance. And she'd tell me what she was doing. Why are you doing that? And she would explain what she was doing. Oh, that sounds quite interesting. And gradually, over a matter of a few weeks, I began to realise and started reading a bit that actually it was quite interesting. And because it also wasn't long before she was saying, I can't lift this box, can you come and help me? Right. So, okay, down to Claro Bees, buy another bee suit. And I was a beekeeper. I then did the course, and we've worked together for 22 years, more or less amicably.
Yeah. You're both still married to each other, so that's good.
Well, yeah, we're still married.
Actually, it is much better to beekeep as a pair than as a single person.
Really?
Yeah, where you make fewer mistakes.
Right.
So somebody's going to do, why are you doing that? No, that's not.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Because actually, sometimes if it's a hot day and you're in the 6th or 7th hive, it's getting a bit, you're not quite as sharp as you were when you started. And you do start to make mistakes. So having two people around is always a good idea.
So you work as a colony as well. That's amazing.
Well, yes.
Yeah, you work together.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the lifting.
Yes, of course. Yeah, it's heavy work, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's stronger than I am.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, over the last year or two, the bees have taken a dislike to Judith.
Oh, really?
And she started to react more to stings.
What has she done? What does she do?
She just turns up with me in the apiary and the bees go berserk, basically.
Really?
But, I can't explain that. Maybe some change in body chemistry or whatever.
The bees don't prefer you?
And no. So, the further she keeps away, the better now, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. So I'm actually I've got a friend who's now coming to help me, so I've still got some help. But it is absolutely a fascinating business.
It is.
But my approach, Judith talks about, she always wanted to keep bees because she was interested in natural history, the social aspects of the bee colony. Whereas my approach has always been the agricultural one.
Yeah.
So what I'm after is how many jars of this can I produce every year?
Yeah.
So you've got some honey here.
Unfortunately, that's the last jar, the last remnants of the last jar of the 1922 honey crop. And it's the only one that was in the house. You can see there's very little left. But luckily, luckily, the 1923 honey crop is already on the hives, and within 3 weeks or a month will be.
So how many jars of this do you get from one hive?
My average over 23 years is £60.
Wow.
But it ranges enormously. Yeah. From, I think the worst year was 15 in a wet summer, badly managed, where we made mistakes, got it wrong. £15 a hive. The best year was 114.
Good grief.
When we took them up to blubber houses on the moors and got a lot of heather honey. It was a good August.
Yeah.
We've taken them up to the moors on many occasions and got very little. In fact, nothing sometimes. When the weather's bad.
And how many hives have you got? Because lugging them all up to blubber houses must be quite a...
Well, we never took more than 2.
Okay.
Because it's a lot of work.
It's heavy work,
We've stopped
isn't it?
doing it. It's a lot of work, yeah. I actually have 7 at the moment.
You've got 7?
7 queen right hives that are producing honey,
Okay.
But in order to prevent swarming, sometime in the next 3 weeks, I will probably have to split all those. Okay. So if you ask me that question, say, at the beginning of June, the answer might be 14, if I'm unlucky.
Yeah. It's a bit like us with houseplants. How many houseplants have you got? Well, we've got what we've got, plus the next 5 that we're going to rescue this week, because, never go shopping when you're hungry, and never get bees unless you're prepared to have 2, 3, 4, 5 hives, I think, as well.
Well, one's no good at all.
No.
Don't, because things do go wrong. You lose the queen dies, or they swarm, or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's no, if it goes wrong, there's no way out if you've only got 1 hive. As long as you've got 2, you can always rescue the first one by purloining some brood from the second one.
Now, I will ask you a few questions about the intricacies of beekeeping and what it involves and how much time it takes, because we had an allotment gardener yesterday saying it could be half an hour a week or all day every day. But first of all, I am curious about what a bee inspector is and what they do. So can you explain what a bee inspector does? Because obviously he can't be here today, but it'd be really interesting from your perspective as to what you get from, because it's a government appointed bee specialist.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So am I doing this?
Don't mind.
Right. Well, the bee inspector has the right to come and inspect your bees.
Okay.
All right. You cannot refuse him.
Mm-hmm.
And he will be inspecting your bees, looking for the health of them.
Yeah.
And for what pests and parasites and things that are there.
Okay.
And he will make you recommendations if you're not doing things well, or say well done, and off he goes. So they are important for maintaining things. And when we're teaching, we always say the bee inspector is not your enemy. He hasn't come to criticise you. He has come to help you.
And support. So it's like a plant health inspector in my job, where
It's
they
identical.
come and inspect the glass houses. Yeah.
It's identical,
right.
yeah.
Yes.
And invasive species are
Really
extremely
important, yeah,
So they've spent a
absolutely.
lot of time now trying to keep Asian hornet out of the country.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
which is treated rather like foot and mouth disease. So
Yes.
if anybody finds Asian hornets, particularly if they're starting to establish,
Yeah.
then the bee inspectors go en masse to that part of the country. And so far, fingers crossed, have succeeded in keeping it out.
And it's usually once a year that they come and see you, I guess, is it?
Oh no,
Oh no, more often.
much less frequently.
Yeah.
Oh really? Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't think we've seen a bee inspector for 5 years, I would think.
Right. Okay.
No, I mean they know where they have to go and what they
Right.
have
Of
to
course.
do.
Yeah. So if you were
And
new
if
to it,
they've
they maybe
got
go more often.
confidence, if they've got confidence in you, they don't come very often.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a new beekeeper, they would probably go and see you early in your second year.
Right.
To,
I understand.
and
yeah.
they're there to help you, to help you do it better. Yes.
It's advisory, isn't
Yes.
it?
It's
Yes,
advisory.
although there
really
is,
there to
They
support
do.
you.
there are
Yeah.
two notifiable diseases,
Yeah.
or rather 3. Anyway, the 2 important ones: American foul brood and European foul brood.
Yeah.
And those are, if you think you've got those, then you are
got to report
obliged
it.
by law to
Yeah.
notify.
And
definitely.
how easy is it to keep bees healthy? Because it's really important, isn't it, that you look after bees and you look after them well. That's why
Absolutely.
it's so important to do a bee course.
Absolutely.
But how easy is it to keep them healthy?
It's not difficult, but you need to know what you're doing.
Yes.
And you have to do it. You can't ignore it. Yeah.
Yeah.
As I was saying before, about the comparison with agriculture or with farm crop animals, it's really exactly the same. You have to have some sort of a breeding policy. You have to provide some sort of housing, a beehive. You have to feed them when they need feeding if they're not looking after themselves, and you've got to keep them healthy.
Yeah.
And that applies, it doesn't matter if we're talking about pigs or sheep or cows
Yeah.
or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's animal husbandry, and it's exactly the same in bees as it is with all the others.
So what would a typical week beekeeping? I know different times of year would be different things, but how much time do you spend with the bees? And I'm guessing they actually are pretty independent and do their own thing most of the time. But
Oh, yeah.
how would you describe what you do typically?
Well, you don't do very much at all, basically.
Perfect.
What you need to do is only do things when they are needed. Now, there are times of the year when the bees will be maybe preparing for swarming, and then you've got to go into your hives every week. Otherwise, you'll find you've lost half your bees, all right, because they've swarmed.
Right.
Whereas there's other times of the year when there's no need to go in, and all you're doing is just checking up on general health and progress.
Okay.
So, it's very variable, but at the same time, it's quite good to have a routine of, we always go to the bees on Tuesdays,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Yeah. So it creates a habit for you rather than for them. But
That's
Well,
right.
no, actually, that's part of the life cycle of the bee.
oh right. Okay.
So it is that weekly inspection is really crucial through late April, through May and into June, which is the swarming season. So what I always say is it's not particularly time consuming, but it is time critical.
Right.
And if something needs doing on Tuesday, you've worked out, then you better do it on Tuesday, not
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Okay.
Otherwise, you could well
Yeah. So
find it's
Tuesday
all
night
gone
is
wrong.
bee night. Yeah.
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 So you start off saying, well, we'll do it on Tuesdays,
Yeah.
and it might take, let's say, 20 minutes a hive, which isn't very much really, is it?
No.
But after about 3 or 4 weeks, they sort of get out of phase, and suddenly you find you're going on Wednesday as well. And then on
Okay.
Thursday you say, I better go and look at that blue hive because it was, So we've had a rule for 20 years, do not go on holiday in May.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say there must be times when you can't
That's
leave.
right.
and-
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's your swarming season.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then there's a lull when nothing much is happening, and then
Yeah.
you've got honey extraction August, September, early September, honey harvest if you like, although
Yeah.
we get half our honey in May, June.
Okay.
And then by the end of October, just as you're beginning to think, we could do with a rest from this, it all stops. and you don't have to do anything again until about the 1st of April.
So what actually
And I think
happens
that's
in winter?
one of the nice things about it as a hobby. It's a 6-month hobby, not
A 6-month hobby. You just enjoy the honey, the mead, the beeswax through the winter months.
I don't like honey,
You don't like honey? Oh, I couldn't-
and I
believe that.
hate mead.
So you're competitive about how much honey you can get from your bees, but you don't like it yourself.
I don't like it, no. But I like producing quality
He
honey.
likes the money that comes in when he
The
sells.
honey money.
Yes.
And that's what pays for the holiday in the winter months.
No.
No, you don't.
No, you don't get
have
rich.
a lot of bees.
You
for
don't get
that.
rich making honey. No, I know.
So what exactly happens during winter though? Because you don't completely, you put them to bed, don't you, for winter? But you don't do nothing, do you? What do you feed them with? Because I'm assuming bees need feeding
if
in
you're
winter.
if you're going to steal the honey, basically, I mean,
Yeah.
the fundamental difference between honeybees and all the other Hymenopterous insects is that honeybees make honey because they overwinter as a colony.
Yeah.
So in a hive, you would typically have 10,000 bees in the winter, as opposed to 30, 40, 50,000 in the summer. So they reduce to 10, and they need about 35 pounds of honey to get through the winter. Now, if we've nicked all the honey that they've carefully made through the summer
Yeah.
and put it in jars and sold it,
Yeah.
we've got to look after them. So I say you've got to feed them when they need feeding. So in September, we're busy feeding sugar syrup to the bees.
Yeah. So
And
what is that? What is sugar syrup?
It's actually a solution of as much sugar as you can dissolve in hot water, basically. So, but in effect, it's a pound of sugar in a pint of water. And you have a little thing called a feeder, which you put on the hive, and the bees take that down effectively, just as they would nectar, which they've obtained from flowers, and they convert it into honey, in inverted commas.
Yeah.
But but it's sucrose predominantly,
Right.
as opposed to glucose and fructose, which it would be from nectar. And they pack it in a frame like that. And this actually is a frame of stores. It isn't honey. I wouldn't be able to sell this, but the bees would eat it as if it were honey. That's a frame of stores that they made, that I fed them last September time, and they haven't needed it this winter. You know, they never stop working, bees. They don't put their feet up and say, all right, that's it, we've made enough now, that'll do. They just keep going and going and going. If you keep feeding them, they keep storing it as honey.
Wow. So if there's somebody here who would love to keep bees, but for whatever reason they don't have the garden space, they've got children or other animals, or they haven't got the time necessarily. If they're wanting to support bees, which is obviously critical for both honeybees and bumblebees and some of our native like mason bees, what's the best thing that they can do in their garden as a gardener? What can I do to support the bees that are around in my environment?
I think the crucial time is spring, late winter and spring. So focus on the early part of the season. So get your snowdrops in, lots and lots of crocuses.
Dandelions?
Well, they'll look after themselves. don't
Yeah,
they?
the dandelions.
So
don't weed all the dandelions.
Take out all the
Don't
dandelions.
take all the dandelions, yeah. Leave a few weeds about the place.
Yeah.
Winter heathers, if you want to create a spectacular bed in your garden,
Yeah.
winter flowering heathers are fantastic because they start to flower, depending on the variety, somewhere around New Year's Day, and ours are just about finishing now. And throughout that period, they will have honeybees on them.
That's kept them going.
So because, as Faith was saying, in the winter, the bees are there. They're not hibernating as such. They're clustered together to keep warm, but they do go out on sunny days to relieve themselves, for instance. They never foul the hive. They go out, and even on a sunny day in February, when the temperature might only be 4 or 5 degrees, if the sun's shining, there will be bees out. But they don't go very far from home because they're
Quick
cold.
nip out, have a poo, quick nip in.
Do you know, I never thought about a bee going to the toilet before in my life.
Do you? No, I know. I feel illuminated and slightly alarmed, but that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
A friend of mine keeps bees, and his father, an elderly guy, absolutely loves bees. He's obsessed with them. He talks about them like they're people. His relationship with bees is unbelievable, and he likens bees on a rainy day to stroppy teenagers. He says they go in the hive, stay in because it's raining, and he says they absolutely trash the place. And he gets quite annoyed.
Well, you do not go to the hive, for instance, on a windy day, like yesterday. I had made arrangements with my friend to go and look in some hives. Well, was it yesterday or Saturday? That's right.
Well, it doesn't
but
matter.
by lunchtime, I said, no, we're not doing that. That east wind was blowing, and they would have been very unhappy bees if I'd taken the
It's like a
the
primary
roof
school
off.
playground, isn't it? Children on a windy day. And that's amazing. And what I love about this as well is obviously you're looking after a colony and a community, but you're a colony and a community as well, because you're obviously working together, but you've got your beekeeping association where you've got your network of other keepers who are all sat here as well, I've seen, to support you, who are interested and passionate and can help out. And I just think that's a fantastic network and a hobby for life, isn't it? Because I don't think it's something that people give up on particularly, do they? Unless massive circumstances change. It's a
The thing, if you were beekeeping by yourself, then the thing that would defeat you as you got older was the lifting.
Yes.
And that's why there's two reasons to work as a pair. One is safety, and the other is the lifting.
It's the lifting. Fantastic.
Yes.
Wow.
You know, taking a super box of honey off the hive in order to be able to look at the brood box underneath is quite a heavy job.
Yeah.
And I mean, I couldn't do it by myself.
No.
So you do it
Sarah,
as
have
a
you felt
tool,
this?
and it's
I
easy.
have. I will feel it in a second. It's just
quite weighty.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was 6 pounds of honey in that.
I was surprised when you handed that to me. I was like, oh,
It's amazing. What a beautiful insight into something that I think we all love the idea of, but I don't think anybody properly understands the sort of the complexities of it until they hear people like you talking. And it's just fantastic.
You don't start beekeeping without doing a course.
No, absolutely.
This is the absolute message.
Definitely, absolutely. And because you get the support, but also you get the knowledge that helps you to avoid making, like you say, those mistakes that could be catastrophic.
Unless you really understand the life cycle of a honeybee intimately, you will get in a terrible tangle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Gosh, that's been absolutely fascinating. I could talk to you both all day. Thank you so much for coming and helping us out, and thank you for sharing your love of bees. A huge Harrogate thank you to Robert and Judith Hart, our beekeepers.
Thank you.